Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very senior and accomplished professional and a people leader from London, UK, Zahira Quattrocchi. Zahira, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much. I feel very honored for being here. Thank you.
Thank you. Zahira is the Senior Vice President, Talent, Culture, and I&D with Anglo American. So, Zahira, my first question before we start talking about the work that you're doing, what early influences shaped your passion for law, people, and organizational culture?
Thank you. Thanks again for having me, and thanks for the question. It's not a question I receive very often, but it's a very important one. And I think it was sort of a mixture of influences. If I'm honest, it's not just one. Certainly, my family. I come from a family of lawyers, economists. So that the kind of the passion for law and socioeconomical sciences was sort of there in my DNA. But I must say, Scouts really played a very important role for me in understanding the importance of real connection, team, wanting to feel like you're part of something bigger, creating friendships and links that last over the year. You would call it intrinsic motivation. Now that I know my way, that's what it is. But that was really important for me. And then multicultural environments. When I started working, I really enjoyed that, and having to deal with in my career. In my initial part of my career with tax authorities all over the world, understanding how multicultural factors play in the way your leadership has to work has been really fascinating for me.
Amazing.
I would say that has all influenced my pathway.
Yeah, absolutely. And your career spans diverse industries across several countries. How have these global experiences shaped your leadership style?
I think it goes back to multicultural, right? And there are a few lessons for sure. First of all, no size fits all. Leadership work is about people, and you need to first and foremost understand that no size fits all is really important. You have to bring yourself and make an habit of listening to people and really understand what's right for them. I think that in shaping my leadership style, it became very apparent very soon that people need to trust you, and you need to trust your people. And I would translate this into having each other's back, right? Being there for each other. That's so important. Trust is almost the oil that really keeps the engine going when it's about teams, when it's about leadership, and particularly when you have multicultural global teams and customers to serve. And the other very big lesson is, even if you work in a function, as I've been working throughout my life, you are a business person. You never have to forget that the business and the customer and the wider business objective is what you work for and the reason you're there.
Amazing.
But the main one, if I have to make it like to summarize it in one word, is listen. Listen is the most important.
Listen, very powerful word, one word, absolutely. So let's now move to your work. Before I ask you a question, for my viewers and listeners, tell me a little bit about Anglo American and your role.
Yeah, Anglo American is a global miner. We have big operations in South Africa, in Latin America. Our marketing business is in Singapore, and we have a big steelmaking coal facility in Australia. And we also have the glamorous part of our business, which is the beers, the diamonds, the miner and jeweler. we are in a big reorganization pathway that started a year ago. It feels like 10 years, but it's actually 18 months. And we have now sold part of our business in South Africa, the platinum, and we are in the process of selling other parts of the business. But we have a very clear strategy: operational excellence, portfolio growth and simplification, and then growth. So it's a very exciting global miner. And what I really like, and I really feel it's worth sharing here, is the Anglo American purpose: reimagining mining to improve people's life. This is the reason many of us have joined the company, and we're very proud. So that's a bit about us.
Fascinating. You were involved behind the designing of the Anglo American leadership framework. Tell me more about this, and what was the inspiration?
So it's the leadership framework comes from a very deep reflection on culture. It comes as a consequence of many conversations with our CEO Duncan. He joined the company 34 years ago as a graduate, and made it to CEO a couple of years ago. And when he made it to CEO, he really reflected on what is Anglo American about, and he thought that culture plays such an important role, and he wanted to make sure culture was aligned to him and to what he wanted the organization to go to. So he brought in Monique Carter, our HR director, and she's been a powerful force of change and culture in many other organizations. And together we decided that I took my role. My role didn't exist before me, and I come from a finance background into an HR and culture background, which is, I feel very blessed and very fortunate to have done that jump, and that's another story. But we sat together and we thought leadership casts the biggest shadow in the organization. So starting from leadership is the right thing to do. And to do that, we actually went out in the organization and really asked people what great leadership is about. And that's how the leadership framework came to life.
Amazing. And how did you ensure that the leadership framework was not just a theoretical exercise, but it actually got embedded into actual behavior across the entire organization?
That is such a great question, because one of my mantra is this can't be a poster on the wall. Organizations sometimes become very corporate-y, and they like these posters on the wall kind of situation. I am very allergic. I like posters on the wall, but I'm very allergic to things that are just big proclamas and don't do anything with that. So we are in the journey. The leadership framework came to life last year while the organization was in the turmoil I was describing of reorganization, rethinking about us and the way we want to lead. And it was so, it was really so important to have the leadership framework to guide us in the turmoil, and to be there for our people, to see that leaders were there for them. What we have done is we have really embedded the leadership framework into the main people systems, into our ways of working, into our values. We are creating cycles by which leaders get feedback from people on their leadership features, and according to the leadership framework, we have made the survey really linked to the leadership framework, really hardwiring it into the way we think about leadership and we live our leadership, and most importantly, giving people the chance to actually keep us honest, listen to people, make sure that we just don't create ourselves, imaging of ourselves that are not real when it comes to people. So linking it, making it impossible not to be part of the game.
Yeah, great response. But when I was reading about you and preparing for my conversation, it was fascinating to see that you have been able to lead cultural transformation in an organization of 90,000 people. What has gone?
That's a bit scary.
What has gone into such a successful cultural transformation of such a large number of people?
It's such a great question. I think there are many definitions of culture. One that I particularly like, and I think it's very, very true, is that culture is how you behave when people don't look at you, when people don't watch, right? Well, how you are when you are truly yourself. I really love that, because if that is true, and I think that is very true, a culture like the one that we want to build, a culture of empowered people growing Anglo American for the long term, is really the foundation of this culture is trust. You need to, as a person working for this organization, you need to trust that the organization is there for you and is going to do the right thing. But the organization has to trust the individual that they are there to do the right thing too. So, if that mutual trust, that deal between the company and the employee is there, if the values are aligned in that way, then you really have an empowered organization that reaches their objectives and works on their strategy, on their strategic objective, and on growth in the right way. But you also have great people who thrive, right? And if you have people thriving and people feeling empowered and engaged, and you have intrinsic motivation, you really want to go to work and be part of that movement, then that's a dream.
Right.
So I'm not sure we're there yet. And as I said, we are navigating times where we are transforming, where we're changing our skin a little bit. But the culture and this promise is, I think, what certainly keeps me very, very awake and very much willing to come to work every day.
Fascinating. Just the scale of the transformation that you're going through will probably be an amazing case study for the corporate world. Moving on, Zahira, what are some of the key elements of a future-ready talent strategy in a heavy industry like mining?
Yeah, I will not tell you that you need to become a wizard at AI. I know that's the easy answer. I'm not going to tell you. I think there are a few ingredients, and I think it's linked to what we've been discussing now. First of all, you need to have the business forefront of what you want to do. Business, the strategy, where do you want to go? You have to have it very clear what is that you want to do in your future. Where do you want to win? How do you, assess the capability level of the people you have in the organization? And when I talk about capabilities, it's not just IQ or how much of an expert you are in your field. It's about leadership. It's about culture. It's about the values, and then it is about vision and what tools do you have to make that vision come to life, right? So when you understand that, that's where you as a talent function really partner with the business for the future and the development of the business. Right. So it's more laying the foundations for a real conversation. And I think a real conversation that keeps on evolving in the world we're living in, with everything that's going on in the world. I think having a futuristic approach to capability and talent is the right thing to do. But you also have to consider people who are able to operate successfully and thrive in unprecedented circumstances, in ambiguity, and navigate that with a big eye on risk. If you think about the future of the world and of the companies and the corporate leaders, then that's what you need to keep in mind. Flexibility, no size fit all, employee value proposition, they are all ingredients, but I think the foundations of a good talent strategy are those.
Great response. Thank you. How are expectations around purpose, belonging, and flexibility reshaping talent engagement?
So, as I said, purpose is a guiding star for us. Reimagining mining to improve people's life is a great purpose. It was what certainly convinced me to join Anglo American. I come from different industries, and my last post was food industry. It was Barilla, where positivity, food and family and friends were everything about, my job. And going to the mining industry was a bit daunting until I heard about the purpose of Anglo American, and that really, really resonated with me. Improving people's life in such a heavy, impacting industry was so great. So purpose is certainly ticking the box there for us. It's a big part of how we live, what we behave, how we behave, what we believe in. And that's a big part. Then flexibility is certainly very important as well. It's very much built in our employee value proposition. A big part of how we think about talent is inclusivity, right? Is that concept of no one size fits all, making sure that you can be a great place for each person to thrive and develop their best selves and be happy at work. But we are a mining company, right? Some of the things that we have to do have to happen in a mine. And a mine is there, and you have to be there. So flexibility is certainly something we embed in our world. We consider, we really think about. We use technology to mitigate. We have great stories of virtual minings in Chile. We were able to create a digital twin of a mine, and we can run it from Santiago instead of having people continuously traveling back and forth from the location where the mine is. So we have great stories. We're building that into the way we lead. But flexibility has to make the peace with the fact that we are anyway a mining company.
Absolutely. My next question is that how do you foster talent mobility and development in a large, complex global organization?
We do foster that. We do foster that by making sure that we have the right career pathways thought for people, and that we create those opportunities for people to actually move function. Sometimes make really, really bold moves, like from tax to culture. But also making sure that we can have people thriving in different positions and experience those cultural difference I was talking about earlier as part of their development as leaders. Of course, that takes an enormous effort from the whole organization. Leaders, welcoming people from very different backgrounds into their teams. Our HR teams in performance and rewards really working hard to make things these career moves smooth. Our employees, right? Because moving your family around and be there in a global company, asking you to go from Singapore to Moquegua in Peru is probably a big shift for everybody. I think it's a team effort. I think we can improve, and we're doing the best to actually make sure we evolve with the business, and we make sure that we create that pathway and the foundation for the business and people.
Fascinating. Next few questions are for you now, Zahira. So, Zahira, tell me, what are the most underrated skills required to succeed in a group head of talent and culture?
Thanks, but very, very good question. I'm not sure they're underrated, but I will go back to listening, trying to give you a little bit more of a sense of what I mean by listening. And to do that, I need to go back to who I am. So I am very, passionate about people and people-driven leader who comes from Sicily. So that means that I am very much of a nurturer. I would want to help you very, very much if you're part of my team. And what that meant in the initial part of my career was that, I was trying to help everybody until the cows came home. But then what happened was that I didn't listen really, really, really deeply, listen to understand. And sometimes just prompting answers or suggesting what people should do suggesting how we should approach project because there was the most efficient way to land to the perfect solution, which by the way was my solution. So listening is so important. And I've learned that if you listening is an exercise. For some people it comes naturally, for some other people it doesn't, but asking, even if you think it comes naturally to you, sometimes you just realize that it doesn't. Maybe you just continue to you just say yes with your head to people, so you're interrupting. So becoming very much aware of how you listen and when you listen is very important. Listen is about being humble, leave your ego at the door, not be arrogant, but also is about being self-aware. Because what I've learned about myself is that sometimes I keep on talking and interrupting people when I'm not sure, when I'm in an environment where I feel I need to demonstrate something, I keep on talking and talking. While I now, with old age, have understood the power of just telling yourself, okay, calm down and shut up, and then just listen.
Amazing.
So listening is very important.
Amazing. So I have time for two more questions for you, Zahira. How do you balance between being a strategic leader and a people-focused listener?
I do balance that because I don't even think there's a big difference, right? Sometimes you need to listen to people to understand and to prove your strategy and to make sure that what you're doing is right. And I think by listening to people, sometimes you become aware of risks, for instance, that you didn't know about. And risks are very important because strategy is such an exciting and positive journey, but it can go wrong in 3 seconds if you're not aware of what's around you. And you can't have all the answers. You want to, but you can't. Good leadership is about being able to listen to the answers and be able to get the answers, even if you don't have to listen to words, but just catch signals. And that comes with being a strategic leader, with being a leader. People trust and they don't feel like they need to protect themselves from you. They will give you a lot of signals and you can in turn give them a lot of guidance and become even a better strategic leader.
Very interesting. And my last question for you, Zahira. What is one leadership lesson you wish more people understood deeply?
I think, intrinsic motivation, having teams that really deeply care where people really deeply care for each other and where people enjoy working with each other are so important. It's different from, the Walt Disney world where everybody is happy and absolutely in agreement all the time. That's very different. I think if you're a good leader, you need to be able to create a team where diversity is there, and diversity brings conflict sometimes. But if conflict is fostered in a way, in an environment where trust is at the bottom, at the core, then conflict is never negative. It brings growth. It brings better ideas to life. It brings an environment where people are really driven to give you their best. And that's a lot. A lot of that comes from the leader. A lot of that comes from a leader being vulnerable. A lot of that comes from a leader being themselves and being really open to what is that we need to do. Having the business in front of our head, but also the individuals, because the business is individuals. The business is made by people, and if people are there and want to thrive, and work in an environment where that is possible, that's when the magic happens.
Amazing. And on that note, Zahira, and your one incredible lesson of how everyone must learn how to listen. Thank you so much for speaking to me about your own amazing journey. Thank you for speaking to me about talent, culture, and leadership from your perspective in your company, Anglo American, and in your entire career. There are lots to learn from our conversation. Thank you for speaking to me, and good luck.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Really grateful. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.